The first time I saw the alien fleet, I wasn't even supposed to be on duty. My shift ended at U-200, and I was halfway through a bottle when command sent a priority ping to my common plant. It wasn't the kind of ping you ignore. Short, sharp, and with that undertone that says something ugly is about to happen. By the time I reached ops, the whole place was humming with tension. The big hollow in the center of the room was lit up with red, our border in the Perseus line. That red wasn't supposed to move. It had been static for 53 years. Tonight it was bleeding inward. Unknown ships, the officer at the display said, his voice flat but his eyes sharp. 18 of them. Heavy tonnage, no transponders, ignored hails. 18, that wasn't a scout mission, that was a probe. And a probe this deep into human space, it meant someone somewhere thought we were soft, thought that the old wars had drained us, thought that maybe humanity had forgotten what it meant to bleed. I knew better. Who's in command? I asked. The officer glanced at me. You are, sir. Fleet command gave it to you, said you've got experience in removing unwelcome guests. That was a polite way of saying I had a reputation. Back in the Sigma-Gate conflict, I'd ordered a preemptive strike that turned a 30-ship invasion force into drifting slag before they even powered up their main weapons. Some people called me reckless. Others called me a war criminal. I called it math. Kill them before they can kill you. The alien ships were still pushing forward, slow but steady. They knew we saw them. They didn't care. They were counting on our hesitation. Most civilizations in the galaxy hesitated. They liked diplomacy, negotiations, treaties. Humans, we sent warnings once. Then we buried the problem. I opened a channel. My voice went out to everyone of their ships. This is Captain Ree Hale of the United Terran Defense Force. You are entering sovereign human space. Turn around now, or you won't have ships left to turn. No reply, just that silent, arrogant crawl forward. I cut the channel. Load the war package, I told the weapons officer. His jaw tightened. Full spectrum. Full spectrum, I confirmed. No survivors, no debris worth salvaging. Make it clear to the rest of the galaxy. We don't negotiate border violations. As the order rippled through the crew, I felt that old calm settle over me. Not peace, never peace, but that cold, surgical clarity that comes when you know the next 10 minutes will define whether your species is feared or pied. They thought they could test us. They were about to learn what a one-way trip really meant. The first time I saw the alien fleet, I wasn't even supposed to be on duty. My shift ended at 200, and I was halfway through a bottle when command sent a priority ping to my common plant. It wasn't the kind of ping you ignore. Short, sharp, and with that undertone that says something ugly is about to happen. By the time I reached ops, the whole place was humming with tension. The big hollow in the center of the room was lit up with red, our border in the Perseus line. That red wasn't supposed to move. It had been static for 53 years. Tonight it was bleeding inward. Unknown ships, the officer at the display said, his voice flat but his eyes sharp. 18 of them, heavy tonnage. No transponders, ignored hails. 18, that wasn't a scout mission, that was a probe. And a probe this deep into human space, it meant someone somewhere thought we were soft, thought that the old wars had drained us, thought that maybe humanity had forgotten what it meant to bleed. I knew better. Who's in command? I asked. The officer glanced at me. You are, sir, fleet. Command gave it to you, said you've got experience in removing unwelcome guests. That was a polite way of saying I had a reputation. Back in the Sigma-Gate conflict, I'd ordered a preemptive strike that turned a 30-ship invasion force into drifting slag before they even powered up their main weapons. Some people called me reckless, others called me a war criminal. I called it math. Kill them before they can kill you. The alien ships were still pushing forward, slow but steady. They knew we saw them. They didn't care. They were counting on our hesitation. Most civilizations in the galaxy hesitated. They liked diplomacy, negotiations, treaties. Humans, we sent warnings once. Then we buried the problem. I opened a channel. My voice went out to everyone. Of their ships, this is Captain Rehale. Of the United Terran Defense Force, you are entering sovereign human space. Turn around now or you won't have ships left to turn. No reply, just that silent, arrogant crawl forward. I cut the channel. Load the war package. I told the weapons officer. His jaw tightened. Full spectrum. Full spectrum, I confirmed. No survivors, no debris worth salvaging. Make it clear to the rest of the galaxy. We don't negotiate border violations. As the order rippled through the crew, I felt that old calm settle over me. Not peace, never peace, but that cold, surgical clarity that comes when you know the next 10 minutes will define whether your species is feared or pied. They thought they could test us. They were about to learn what a one-way trip really meant. The order went out like a pulse of ice through the ship. On the bridge, nobody moved casually anymore. Every hand, every eye was locked in that silent dance of war prep. Screens came alive with weapons, diagnostics, targeting grids, and a dozen different kill scenarios scrolling faster than any normal human could follow. The hum of the reactor deepened, resonating in my chest. I leaned forward in my command chair, elbows on my knees, watching the hollow projection of the 18 alien ships crawling deeper into our space. They were big, bigger than anything I'd seen since the Valkyrie incursions, each shaped like an elongated crescent with sharp spines along their hulls, ugly, predatory lines. Whoever designed them wasn't interested in trade runs or exploration. They were built to take telemetry. I asked without looking away from the display. Long-range scans indicate dense composite armor, replied Lieutenant Morin, the tactical officer. Unknown energy signature on their forward arrays. Engines are overpowered for their size, likely fast strike capability, no heat bleed, meaning they've got advanced cooling. Whoever they are, they know how to mask. I grunted. Masking heat meant they knew how to hide from passive detection systems. It also meant they'd planned for stealth entry into someone else's territory. That made this more than a casual border poke. This was a deliberate test. Rain 3.2 million km in closing. The alien formation shifted slightly, the lead ship drifting ahead like a spear tip. It wasn't a random movement. They were testing our reaction. I could almost feel the commander on that ship watching us, waiting to see if we flinched. They were in for disappointment. Target the lead ship, I said. Load vortex missiles in primary tubes and spin up the Hell Spike cannon. There was a pause. Not hesitation, just the crew processing the escalation. Vortex missiles were banned in half the civilized galaxy for being inhumane. They didn't just destroy ships, they ripped open space-time in a localized pocket, collapsing anything inside into molten wreckage. The Hell Spike was our own dirty little invention, a rail gun, so powerful it punched clean through planetary crust. Sir Morin said carefully, "Are we going for the example shot already? Lieutenant, when you find a venomous animal in your bed, you don't poke it to see how it reacts, you cut its head off before it moves." He nodded once, no more questions. That was why I liked Morin. He understood that war wasn't about glory or speeches. It was about removing threats before they became disasters. The crew worked with quiet, lethal efficiency. Warheads cycled into position. The Hell Spikes capacitors began to charge, a low, predatory whine building through the deck plates. In the tactical overlay firing, arcs bloomed around the alien fleet. Still no response to our warning. Calmed. Good, I said. Means they're committed. That makes what happens next nice and clean. For a moment, the only sounds on the bridge were the systems purring to life. My gaze stayed locked on the lead alien ship. I wondered if their commander was watching us on his own displays, maybe thinking we'd fall back to the Perseus Line's outer stations, maybe thinking we'd talk before we shot. That was the problem with most species. They thought humanity was like them. We weren't. Range 1 million km, Morin called out. Stood, fire vortex missiles full spread. Hell Spike on my mark. The ship shuddered as the missile tubes coughed death into the void, sleek black darts vanishing into nothing before their engines lit up, streaking towards the alien formation. The moment they launched, the alien fleet broke formation, sharp, coordinated, not panic battle readiness. They'd come prepared for a fight. Alien ships spooling up weapons. More embarked, forward arrays glowing. Energy spike detected. I narrowed my eyes at the lead ship. The faint shimmer of their forward arrays brightened into a glare. My gut clenched. Hell Spike fire. The deck roared under my boots as the Hell Spike rail gun launched a slug the size of a city bus at a fraction of light speed. In the hollow, the bright orange line of its trajectory sliced across the void, punched through the lead ship's forward section and exited out the back in under a second. No explosion, just a sudden venting of atmosphere and a glittering spray of debris. Direct hit, Morin confirmed. Massive structural breach. He cut off as the ship's center imploded, folding in on itself before erupting into a bloom of molten fragments. The remains drifted, tumbling in silence. One down. The alien formation wavered just for a moment, but then tightened again. Whoever was in command was disciplined. The vortex missiles hit a heartbeat later. They didn't explode like normal weapons. Space seemed to bend, light distorting around the points of impact before reality snapped back with a violent surge. 3 ships simply weren't there anymore, gone, erased like they'd been carved out of existence. The comms lit up with voices, panicked alien bursts in a language our translators struggled to catch. The gist was clear: shock, confusion, and rage. "They're turning weapons on us," Morin said, and the bridge filled with red threat markers. "Shields to maximum," I ordered. "Return fire with shard cannons. Aim to engines, then finish them." The ship dove into the fight like a predator smelling blood. Our shard cannons tore into their flanks, shards of hyperdense metal punching through armor like paper. Alien plasma blasts hammered against our shields, flaring them in bright arcs. The deck shook with each hit, but the shields held for now. 2 more alien ships went dark as their reactors overloaded. One tried to ram us, surging forward at insane speed, but we caught it mid-charge with a hell spike round that split it in half like rotten fruit. The fight wasn't one-sided, though. Their weapons were stronger than I'd expected. A plasma strike clipped our port shield hard, enough to make the lights flicker. Damage control teams reported hull scorching on multiple decks. Another hit jarred my teeth, and I caught the faint scent of burning insulation. But the crew didn't break. They moved like a machine. Reload, fire, adjust, fire again. This was why I'd handpicked them from every corner of the fleet. 5 minutes in, the battlefield was a graveyard. Half the alien ships were drifting wrecks, venting atmosphere and heat. Another 4 were dead hulks. Only 2 were still fighting, and even they were limping. I opened comms again, projecting my voice across the void. You were warned. This is the price of ignoring it. Leave now or join your dead. One of the remaining ships broke off immediately, engines flaring as it fled toward the border. The other stayed still. Captain Morin said, picking up strange energy readings from that last ship. I turned toward the display. The alien ship's forward section was glowing again, brighter than before, but this time there was a twisting shimmer in the space ahead of it, like heat haze in a desert. My stomach dropped. That's not a weapon charge, I said. That's a beacon. They're calling someone. Worse, I said, jaw tightening. They're opening a gate. In the display, space tore open in front of the alien ship, a dark, jagged hole rimmed with lightning. Something massive stirred beyond it, shapes moving in the shadows. Every instinct I had screamed that whatever was coming through was worse than the fleet we'd just torn apart. Hellspike, I snapped. Maximum charge. Put it through that gate before it stabilizes. I surcharging, Morin said, fingers flying over controls. The deck thrummed as the capacitors pushed toward overload. The alien ship fired first. Not a weapon, more of a pulse aimed at the gate. The tier widened. The shapes beyond grew clearer, towering silhouettes with glowing spines. My crew went silent, staring. Hell spike. Ready, Morin shouted. Fired. The slug screamed through space and hit dead center in the gate. The tier buckled, lightning flaring violently, and then it collapsed in on itself with a silent detonation that made the hollow flicker. The alien ship that had been right in front of it was caught in the collapse, crumpling like tin under a hammer. Silence fell over the bridge. No more hostiles, just drifting debris, cooling wreckage, and the faint static-laced whisper of our sensors recovering from the interference. I sank back into my chair, exhaling slowly. Log this engagement as an Article 7 response, I said. Mark all alien wrecks for salvage denial. Nothing leaves this system intact. Yes, sir, Morin said. Comms cleared. Their throat. Captain, what do we do about the one that ran? I met there. Eyes cold and certain. Let them run. Let them tell their people exactly what happens when you step into human space without permission. The bridge was quiet again, save for the steady hum of the reactor out beyond the hull. The battlefield drifted, silent testimony to a rule older than most civilizations in the galaxy. No one enters human space uninvited. Not if they want to go home. I didn't sleep that night, not because of guilt. Guilt's a luxury for people who can afford to lose. No, what kept me awake was the question of why. Why would an armed alien fleet 18-strong risk pushing 3 million clicks into human space, ignoring all warnings? And why, just before dying, would they open a gate big enough to spit out something we couldn't even identify? We denied them their reinforcements, or whatever those spine shadows were. But the attempt meant this wasn't random. Somebody out there was probing the perimeter, testing the walls, seeing where the cracks might be. I stood in my quarters, leaning on the metal counter, staring at the half-empty bottle of station whiskey I'd been nursing for months. The liquid shifted lazily as the ship's grav plates hummed underfoot. I thought about pouring a glass, but the alarm in my chest was louder than the thirst. The door chimed. "Enter," I said. Lieutenant Morin stepped inside, still in his combat black's data pad under one arm. He looked like hell, dark circles under the eyes, jaw tight. "Report," I said. He handed me the pad. "Preliminary scan data on the wrecks. We got partial readings on their armor composition, weapons output. And sir, this part's the kicker." I scrolled through the specs. Most of it was ugly but familiar: plasma emitters, rail guns, armor with composite alloys. Then I hit the highlighted section. "They're running Terran drives," I said. "Not just Terran drives," Morin replied. "Mark V pulse engines, outdated but still ours. The plating on some sections matches old Earth Navy hull work. Not exact, but close enough that they've either studied our designs, stolen them, or they bought them." I finished. "From someone willing to sell human tech outside authorized channels." He didn't need to say it, but we both thought it. There were only a handful of powers in the galaxy who could smuggle something that big and that dangerous past the Unified Terran Trade Authority. I set the pad down. "Get this to intelligence, sealed file." "No one outside command sees it." "Not yet." "Yes, sir." He hesitated. "And other runner." "What about it?" "Our long-range sensors picked up its jump signature before it went dark. Vector suggests it's heading toward the Grath expanse." The name twisted my gut. The Grath were a fractured mess, half pirates, half mercenaries, all dangerous. If the runner made it there, it could vanish into 100 systems and come back with a small war fleet. "Send the data to Recon Division," I said. "Mark the vector as priority intercept. We can't chase. We've got no orders, but someone will." Morin nodded and left. The next day we docked at Station Ardent, one of the deep space bastions along the Perseus line. The station was a metal city wrapped around a spinning core, bristling with gun batteries and shield towers. Even from Kill 'Em Out, you could feel the hum of its reactors through your boots. Command had called me in the moment our transponder pinged. The briefing room was cold and bare, just a steel table, a wall hollow, and 3 officers I'd only ever seen on encrypted feeds. Rear Admiral Casson was at the head of the table, eyes sharp as cut glass. She had the look of someone who didn't blink much because blinking wasted time. I stood at attention. "Sit," she said without looking up from her pad. I did. She tapped the pad and the hollow above us came alive with a replay of the engagement. I watched the alien fleet approach, watched our missiles carve holes in them, watched the hell spike tear through the lead ship. It played out in silence, except for the faint hum of the projection. When the gate appeared, Casson finally looked up. You saw this with your own eyes. Yes, ma'am, and you're certain it was a gate? As certain as I've been about anything in my career, whatever was on the other side. We didn't get a clean look, but it wasn't friendly. Casson leaned back. Intelligence thinks the ships were Graf built, but the drive cores and armor suggest Terran origins, possibly black market surplus, possibly theft or a leak. I said. Her eyes narrowed. You have a name? No, but I have a guess. And it's not someone you'd catch running crates in a cargo skiff. Whoever did this has political cover. That landed in the room like a dull weight. None of them disagreed. She switched the holo to a star map. Red line traced from our engagement. Point to the graph expanse. The runner made it, she said flatly. It jumped twice, switched IDs, and disappeared into a neutral port. 2 days later, long-range monitors picked up graph chatter about a gate key. I frowned. Gate key, a portable activator, small enough to fit on a warship, strong enough to rip a hole between sectors. Illegal tech in every civilized system. You destroyed one gate, now they might have more. That was bad. Gates weren't just faster than standard FTL. They bypassed every border, every defense grid, every patrol route. If you had one, you could appear over someone's home world without warning. What's our move? I asked. Casson studied me for a moment. Officially, we don't have one. The council's in talks with Grath intermediaries, trying to determine intent. Unofficially, she leaned forward. We're forming a shadow task force, small, mobile, deniable. You'll lead it. I almost smiled. Almost. Target the runner and anyone tied to supplying them with Terran tech. We want the gate keys. And we want whoever's behind this, breathing or otherwise. I nodded. Understood. She slid a data chip across the table. Mission specs, preliminary intel, and clearance codes. Burn it after you memorize it. We launched within 12 hours. No ceremony, no announcement. Just a stripped-down cruiser with skeleton crew and enough firepower to wipe out a city. Morin stayed on as my exo. I handpicked the rest, men who'd fought in the dark corners of the galaxy, where official maps lied. The vector took us toward the expanse. Out there, law was a suggestion, and betrayal was currency. I'd been there once before, and the memory still smelled of burnt metal and blood. 3 days into the run, we picked up the first shadow. They're tailing us, Morin said from the sensor pit. Small craft, running silent, but the grav signatures there. I didn't need a scan to guess who it was. Grath loved shadowing potential threats before deciding whether to rob or hire them. Bring them closer, I said. He glanced at me. Closer? Yeah, drift into their lane, cut speed by 10%. Make them think we're unaware. 20 minutes later, the shadow bit. It crept up behind our starboard quarter, just far enough to get a good scan of us. That's when I gave the order. Flip the coil guns and light them up. The trap snapped shut. Our ship spun 90 degrees. In an instant, coil guns roaring. Shadowcraft's shields flared once, then died. The next salvo turned its cockpit into molten slag. Boarding team to shuttle bay, I ordered. I want survivors. We got one, a Graf pilot with half his face burned and more teeth than sense. I had him in the interrogation chair within an hour. You were following us, I said. He grinned through blood. Following? No. Hunting. For who? He laughed. You'll find out Soon enough, the one who bought your drives wants to meet the man who killed their vanguard. That stopped me cold. Their vanguard, he nodded, those ships. You fought just the knife they used to. Test the skin, the sword is still coming. I leaned closer. When his grin widened. Soon enough that you won't have time to run. I let that sit. Sometimes silence cuts deeper than threats. Finally I stood. Lock him in the BR rig. Double guard back on the bridge. Morin was waiting. Well, they know who we are, I said, and they're coming for us. His jaw tightened. Then we'd better hit them first. I stared out at the stars. In my gut, I knew the next engagement wouldn't be like the one at the Perseus line. The 18-ship fleet was a test. What was coming next would be the real war. We crossed the line into the graph expanse under a false transponder. Our hull repainted to look like a scavenger hauler with more rust than teeth. Out here, you didn't announce yourself as military unless you wanted every pirate from here to the rim sniffing at your engines. The moment we passed the last Terran beacon, space felt different. Not literally. The stars were the same, the void just as empty, but there was a weight here, an unspoken promise of trouble. The comm channels were cluttered with barter hails, distress signals, and the occasional screaming match between smugglers. Ships came and went without flight plans, their drives spiking on our sensors like ghosts in a storm. Morin leaned over his console. You ever notice the expanse smells like someone else's gun barrel? Means you're paying attention, I said. Keep our IFFF tight. No pings unless I order it. Our target was the runner, the ship that had fled our last battle and carried word of our engagement back. Here, intelligence said it docked somewhere in this sector, then went dark. The expanse had dozens of independent stations, most run by cutthroats, exiles, or worse. We needed a name before we could put steel to the right throat. 2 days in, we found our first breadcrumb, a supply station called Dargan's Wheel hung against the black, its ring spinning slowly around a central spire. It looked half abandoned, its hull scarred from decades of collisions and gunfire, perfect for disappearing ships. We docked under the cover of a fake salvage manifest. As soon as the airlock cycled, the smell hit me, burnt fuel, sweat, and cheap fermented protein, the kind of stink you only got in places that hadn't been cleaned since before you were born. The dockmaster was a broad grass with skin like old leather and 4 eyes that never looked the same way at once. Cargo, he rasped. Scrap metal, busted Comes, I said, sliding him a chit loaded with enough credits to make questions disappear. Looking for someone who came through here a few days ago. Sleek black runner, Terran drive signature, probably paid in bulk fuel. One of his eyes twitched toward me. Lot of ships pass through, friend. I slid a second chit across the counter. He palmed it without looking. Yes, he said slowly. I saw your runner docked. 2 days took on supplies, swapped whole plates, left with escort. My gut tightened. Escort 4 ships fast. All graph hulls, but different, reinforced, newer than what you see around here. Looked military, but not any flag I know. Where'd they go? He shrugged. Corward, toward Jovel's grave. Morin, standing behind me, muttered, "That's suicide." He wasn't wrong. Jovel's grave wasn't a station or a planet, it was a shipyard graveyard. Hundreds of wrecks drifted there. Leftovers from a war the galaxy forgot. The place was crawling with scavengers. And worse, it was the perfect hiding place for a fleet you didn't want found. We left the wheel and burned toward Jovel's grave. The first wrecks appeared 6 hours later, hulks of battle cruisers, frigates, even planetary carriers, all stripped to bone and left to drift. Our scanners showed hundreds more in the debris field ahead. It was like flying into the ribs of a dead god. Any active transponders? I asked. None, Morin said, but I'm getting faint heat traces. Something's alive in there. We went dark. No active scans. No shields, just a slow drift on minimal power. The cruiser slid between shattered hulls, our hull lights off. The graveyard swallowing us whole. Every shadow could hide a turret. Every piece of debris could mask a ship. Then we saw them tucked into the broken shell of an old dreadnought were 6 ships, sleek armed, and running heatsink protocols. Runner was there, docked against a larger vessel, bristling with weapons we didn't recognize. It wasn't graph design. And it wasn't tan. Record everything I said. Zoom on that flagship. The hull markings were like nothing in our databases. Jagged lines, sharp angles, and a symbol that looked like a circle split in 2. My skin prickled. This was new. And new in the expanse meant dangerous. Can we get close enough to tag them? Morin asked. Close? Yes, tag maybe. But we do it wrong. They'll burn us down before we blink. We drifted closer, using the debris as cover. I kept my eyes on the flagships. Weapon arrays, they weren't just for show. You could feel the power they held even from here. Then a shadow moved behind it. A ship emerged from deeper in the wreck field, bigger than the flagship, with spines along its hull that pulsed faint blue. Morin's voice went tight. That's not in our records either. The graph pilot's words came back to me. The sword is still coming. The big ship anchored alongside the others. And suddenly the whole scene made sense. This wasn't a base. It was a staging point. The runner had brought the Vanguard's killers here to meet their reinforcements. I knew what would happen. If they finished refitting and moved, that fleet would vanish into the void until it reappeared somewhere we couldn't stop it. In Terran space, on our worlds, in our homes. We can't let them leave, Morin said. No, I agreed, but we can't fight them here, not with just us. One wrong move and we're dust, so we call command. I shook my head. Command won't authorize a strike without more proof. They'll bury this in committee while these bastards gear up. Then what? We bleed them before they leave. We set the trap over the next 6 hours. The wreck field was perfect for it. Metal shadows, dead engines to hide behind. We planted micromines along the main exit vectors, masked their signatures too. Look like old debris. Morin recalibrated the Hell Spike for rapid fire at short range, and we loaded every missile tube with cluster warheads. We waited. 2 hours later, the runners' engines lit. The rest followed. The big spine ship moving like a predator too. Slow to fear anything, they threaded through the debris, heading for open space. The first mine went off under the lead escort, shearing off half its hull. The blast echoed through the wrecks like thunder. The fleet scattered, weapons hot. We came in from the dark, coil guns blazing. The first salvo punched through the runner's engines, crippling it. Morin swung the Hell Spike onto an escort, the slug tearing it apart in one shot. The big spine ship turned toward us, and I finally saw its weapons arrays. Light up, they didn't fire plasma or slugs, they fired arcs, lines of blue. White energy ripped through space, cutting wrecks in half like they were paper. One of the arcs clipped our shields and the whole bridge lit up with alarms. Shields at 40% more embarked. Hold them, I snapped. Focus all fire on that spine bastard. Missiles streaked across the void, exploding against its shields. The thing didn't slow, it came straight for us. Arcs charging again. I made the call. Evasive Delta II put us between those wrecks. We dove through the rib cage of a derelict carrier, the spine ship, chasing us, its arcs carving through the metal around us. Sparks rained across our hull, alarms screaming in my ears. Morin swung the Hell Spike for a point-blank shot. Locked fire, the slug slammed into its forward array, punching deep into the hull. For the first time, the spined ship flinched, its arcs died mid-charge. Shields flickering, hit it again. We didn't get the chance. Another ship, a smaller one but fast, cut in front of us, unloading a barrage that rattled teeth. Hull breach alarms flared. Portside venting atmosphere, damn it. Control shouted. I made the only choice left. Break off, burn hard out of the field. We tore away from the wrecks, engines screaming, the spine ship still moving but slower now. They didn't chase. They couldn't, not after the damage we'd done. We'd bloodied them, but they were still out there. And next time they wouldn't be hiding in a graveyard. We limped back toward Terran space with half our portside plating hanging by threads and 2 decks sealed under vacuum. Every corridor smelled like burnt wiring and coolant, and the constant thrum of the damaged reactors was just off enough to make my teeth itch. I stayed on the bridge most of the run home, not because the crew needed me. Morin had the helm steady, but because I didn't want to close my eyes. Every time I blinked, I saw that spine ship coming through the wreck field, arcs tearing the darkness apart. It wasn't fear, it was calculation. I was measuring how close we'd come to dying and how many steps it would take to finish the job next time. 3 days later, we crossed the Perseus line and dropped into station. Ardent shadow, the docking crew stared at our hull like they'd never seen a warship come home alive from a fight it shouldn't have survived. Command didn't even wait for the ship to cool before summoning me. Rear Admiral Casson was already in the briefing chamber when I walked in. This time there were 2 new faces, Fleet Intelligence Director Oren and Defense Minister Rake. Both were political men, which meant both were dangerous in their own ways. Casson didn't waste time. Report. I dropped a drive core on the table. The metal cylinder was scorched and pitted, but its markings were still visible. The jagged split circle sigil from the flagship in the grave. Recovered from the runner we crippled, I said. Markings match the ships we engaged, not in our database, not in any graph records. This is something new and it's organized. Orton turned the core over in his hands, frowning. What's their weapons profile? Varied, standard graph escorts running modified Terran drives, but their capital ship. I looked at Casson. Arcs, energy beams that shear through hull like paper. We took one glancing hit, lost 40% of our shields instantly. Rake spoke for the first time. You said capital ship singular. How many more? I didn't blink. The grave had 6 smaller warships plus the flagship, all docked to that spined monster. My guess that wasn't there Whole force, that was a forward. Detachment. Silence settled over the table like a shroud. Casson finally broke it, and their intent. Their staging. I said the runner didn't just flee, they went home. They were bringing the Vanguard's killers back to meet their reinforcements. Whatever fleet they're building, it's not meant to patrol borders, it's meant to invade. Rake leaned forward. Invade who? I let the question hang for a second. We were the ones who slaughtered their first fleet. You think they're going to aim anywhere else? Orton nodded slowly. We've been hearing rumors in the French colonies, outposts going dark, frayers vanishing without trace, no confirmed survivors. We thought it was pirates. This fits better. The room divided fast. Rake wanted to mobilize the line, pull every available ship back to the border and wait. Orton argued for shadow ops, quietly infiltrating the expanse to find the rest of the fleet before they were ready. Casson was somewhere between, her eyes locked on me like she was reading my mind. Finally she said, Hale, you've seen them up close, you've hit them and lived. What's your recommendation? I didn't bother dressing it up. We go back, not with a wall of battleships, not yet. We send in a strike group built for one purpose. Their capital ship before it leaves hiding. Without that, the rest of their fleet's just teeth without a jaw. Rake shook his head. Too risky. You get caught, you start the war you're trying to prevent. I met his gaze. Minister, the war's already started. They crossed our line with 18 ships. They opened a gate into our territory. They've already decided we're the enemy. The only question now is whether we hit first or wait for them to bring the fight to our homes. Casson's mouth twitched just enough for me to know I'd struck the right nerve. Rake sat back silent. Orton tapped the drive core against the table. If we authorize this, you'll have no support beyond your own task force. No resupply, no reinforcements. You get caught, you're gone. I leaned forward. Then I'll make damn sure we don't get caught. We left Station Arden under a false flight plan 2 days later. This time we had teeth, 2 corvettes and a stealth frigate running with us, all crewed by ghosts from the covert division, men who didn't exist on paper, men who wouldn't blink if we ended up in a firefight with no quarter given. Morin stood beside me on the bridge, studying the course display. Same approach. No, last time we came in through the outer grave. This time we'll slip in through the blind side behind the old cruiser belt. More debris cover, less chance of someone spotting us before we're close enough to strike, and if they've moved, then we burn every shadow between us and the next lead. The run into the expanse was quieter than I liked. No pirate ambushes, no scavenger hails, just empty void. That's not peace, that's the kind of quiet you get before someone puts a knife in your back. On the 4th day, the frigate's recon array picked up a faint power surge in the direction of the grave. It wasn't much, just a spike, like a reactor coming online after long idle. We went dark and slid in. The grave was different now. Where before it had been a still cemetery of dead metal, now it pulsed with movement. Small craft darted between wrecks, welding, stripping, refitting. New ships sat half hidden under plating from the old hulks, and there it was, the spine capital ship, anchored like a spider in its web. Its hull bore fresh scars, our work, but it was alive, arcs sparking faintly along its spines. They're repairing, Morin said. They're building, I corrected. Look. Beyond it, behind the flagship floated something bigger, a skeletal frame, surrounded by drones, slowly taking shape into a hull longer than 3 dreadnoughts end to end. Marin's voice went low. What the hell is that? I don't know, I said. But if they finish it, we're going to need a graveyard bigger than this. One, we couldn't just hit the flagship and run, not now, if that thing behind. It was a new capital ship, destroying it before it powered up was the only way to keep it from breaking our line in half. The strike plan was simple: frigate, flanks wide, planting remote mines near the docked escorts. Corvettes run interference, drawing fire away from our cruiser. We punch through with the Hell Spike, hit the flagship's arc arrays, then put every missile we have into the unfinished ship's frame before its shields come online. We waited until the grave was deep in its repair cycle. Shields down for maintenance, drones, motion. Then we struck, the mines went off. First, turning 3 escorts into expanding clouds of debris. Before the alarms could even echo through the grave, our corvettes roared in from opposite sides, coil guns tearing through the smaller ships. The flagship reacted instantly, arcs flaring to life, cutting one corvette clean in half, but that left its flank open. Hell Spike fire, I barked. The slug ripped into its spine, array tearing through the main arc. Emitter, the flagship shuddered, its arcs dying mid-flare. Reload, hit it again, while Morin lined up the second shot. I ordered the missile tubes hot. Our first salvo slammed into the skeletal frame of the new ship, blasting through its unshielded sections. Metal screamed in the void as chunks drifted away. The second Hellspike shot tore deep into the flagship's midsection, venting fire and atmosphere. It didn't die, but it reeled. Then the drones swarmed, dozens of them, each the size of a fighter, came off the frame and dove at us. Their weapons were crude, but there were too many. Shields flared, hull plating screamed. We can't hold them all, Morin shouted. Then we don't. I fired the main missiles, every tube, every warhead, straight into the frame. The explosion lit the grave like a sunrise, fragments of the half-built monster spinning away into the dark. The flagship didn't chase, it just sat there in the wreckage, arcs guttering like it was watching us leave. We didn't stay to see if it lived or died. That wasn't the mission. The grave was burning, the frame was gone, and whatever war they were planning would now be delayed. But as we pulled away, I couldn't shake the feeling that the flagship's commander had let us go, like they'd decided this wasn't the real fight. That thought followed me all the way back to the line. We made it back to the Perseus line without firing another shot, but I knew the clock had already started ticking. We'd crippled their flagships, main arcs torn apart their half-built monster, and turned their graveyard staging into a scrapyard. That kind of insult doesn't get forgotten. Command took one look at our combat recordings and classified them under Article 0, highest threat level short of an open declaration of war. Fleet intelligence started scraping every border sensor, log, every trade route report, looking for the smallest ripple that might point to the spined ship's trail. It didn't take long to find it. 3 days after our return, a deep space mining colony on Vesta Prime went silent. No distress call, no system beacon, just dark. That colony sat a full jump inside Terran space, too deep for pirates, too quiet for a civil dispute. The admirals Call came through on a secure channel. Before I'd even gotten off the bridge. Captain Hale, Cassin's voice was tight, stripped of every ounce of formality. We've lost contact with Vesta Prime. Last telemetry shows an energy spike, matching the arc weapons you reported. My jaw clenched. The flagship. We think so, and if they're already hitting colonies, they didn't come alone. Orders, you're not just hunting anymore. She said, you're defending our own. House, get a Vesta, find survivors. Kill anything that's still there. We burned hard for the colony, cutting the normal safety margins on our drive cycle. The crew didn't complain. They knew what was at stake. Morin had the gunnery. Teams on constant drills, the medics. Prep triage bays we all hoped we wouldn't need. When we dropped out of FTL in the Vesta system, the site hit like a gut punch. The planet's surface was scorched in. Wide swaths, whole mining districts, reduced to glowing craters. The orbital station was a skeletal ruin, chunks of it still drifting in a slow death spiral and hanging over the northern hemisphere like a vulture was the spined flagship. It was different now, scarred from our last fight, plating patched with mismatched metal, but its arcs glowed steady. Two smaller ships flanked it, and a swarm of drones moved between the wreckage, picking over debris. Any Terran signals? I asked. Comms officer's face was grim. Faint distress beacon from surface. Sector 9 could be a bunker, no orbital defenses left. Morin glanced at me. We can go straight for the flagship or try to pull survivors first. We do one, we lose the chance of the other. I didn't like the choice, but it wasn't really a choice at all. Survivors, I said. We save who we can. Then we take the bastard's head. We dropped into low orbit, keeping the planet between us and the flagships. Direct line of fire. Morin took the helm for the descent, threading us through the drifting station's remains to mask our signature. The bunker was buried under what had been a mining hub, now just blackened steel and slag. We landed hard enough to rattle teeth. Our boarding team already in full armor. I went with them. Inside the bunker, the air was hot and stale. The lights flickered in long, slow gasps. We found 32 survivors, miners, station techs, a few kids packed into the central chamber. They were filthy, dehydrated but alive. An older man with a bloodied sleeve grabbed my arm. They came without warning. The arcs, they didn't just hit buildings, they hit people. His eyes were wild, haunted. We saw them take bodies, not just dead, alive. I didn't have time to ask why. The deck shook under our boots. An impact from above. Captain Morin's voice came through the comm. Flagship's drones inbound, several dozen. You've got maybe 2 minutes before they're on top of you. Get the survivors aboard, I snapped. The extraction was chaos. Drones screamed overhead, their weapons tearing through the surface like claws through paper. We cut down the first wave at the landing site, then pushed the civilians into the shuttle as the second wave closed in. By the time we broke orbit, the flagship had moved. It was turning toward us, arcs charging. She's going to fire, Morin said. Voice steady but eyes sharp. Put the survivors in the shadow of the planet, I ordered. Then bring us around full burn toward her bow. He didn't ask why. He knew. We came at the flagship head-on. Nose taunts. Its arcs lit space in searing blue, cutting close enough to burn our shields down to 20%. But I'd studied those weapons, how they cycled, how the arcs built charge, hell spike. I barked. The slug slammed into the same section we damaged in the grave, punching through the patchwork plating. The arcs died for 3 precious seconds. We used them. All tubes fire. Every missile we had left streaked across the gap, slamming into its forward array. The explosions ripped deep into its spine, venting glowing gas. One of its escorts broke formation, swinging wide to flank us. Morin twisted us hard, bringing coil guns to bear. We tore it apart in 3 salvos, debris scattering into the void. Second escort tried to shield the flagship, moving between us. That's when the frigate from our task force dropped out of FTL behind it and hit it with a full spread. The escort came apart in a spray of molten chunks. Now it was just us and the flagship. It didn't try to run. Maybe it couldn't, or maybe its commander was as stubborn as I was. We closed the gap until the hull filled the viewport. I could see the scorch marks we'd given it before. The repairs half finished. I could imagine the crew inside running to their posts, feeling the same cold clarity I did. Hell. Spike, last round, Morin said. Make it count. The slug tore through its midsection, and the flagship finally bled. Shards of armor, flashes of internal fire. It listed arcs guttering out. Break off, I ordered. We pulled away just as its reactor went. The explosion was silent, but it lit the system like a second sun, fragments scattering across the void. When the light faded, Vesta's sky was quiet. The survivors' shuttle cleared the atmosphere, docking with our frigate. On the bridge, Morin exhaled. That's one hell of a message to send back to their people. Yeah, I said, watching the debris spin. The only problem is they've already gotten the one they wanted to send us, because I knew deep in my bones that this wasn't their main force. This was just a strike to show they could reach into our heart and take what they wanted, and next time they wouldn't leave 32 survivors. 3 days after we burned the spined flagship over Vesta Prime, the border alarm started screaming. Not a probe, not a vanguard. The fleet commands alert hit every ship in Terran space. Article 0 escalated to Article 1. That was as high as it got without the Council formally declaring war. Every combat capable vessel was ordered to rally to the Perseus line. Civilian traffic was locked down. The deep colonies were put under blackout orders. We'd known this was coming. We just hadn't expected it so soon. Station Ardent became the eye of the storm. When we arrived, the docking bays were chaos. Frigates, destroyers, even freighters pressed into combat duty were loading munitions and fuel at a dead run. The station's corridors were crowded with troops, engineers, and medics moving with the tight, silent focus of people who'd already accepted that not everyone here would come back. Cassin's briefing was blunt. 28 ships confirmed on approach, she said, the hollow display throwing their crimson icons across the room. We believe this is the primary strike group. Same split circle insignia hail brought us from the grave. 3 capital vessels supported by heavy escorts and drone swarms. They're moving in a wall formation straight for Sector Gate 9. Gate 9 was one of the primary access points to human space. Destroy it and they'd split the line in half, cutting off our reinforcement routes. I scanned the fleet layout. The 3 capital ships were monsters, each bigger than the spined flagship we just destroyed. Their heat signatures showed multiple arc banks plus unknown weapons embedded along their hulls. The escorts were heavy gunships, fast, armored, perfect for breaking through defensive screens. "What's our plan?" I asked, Cassin's eyes. "Cut to me, we hold them at the line. The fleet's massing here, here, and here." She marked 3 points along the defense grid. "Hale, you'll lead strike. Wing 2 at the center, you're our spear. Point, hit them head on, keep them from pushing through to the gate. You hold. The rest holds, you break, we lose." Her tone was matter-of-fact, but the meaning was clear. This was the line in the sand. The hours before a battle like that aren't quiet, they're too loud. Every system check, every weapons calibration, every last-minute repair feels like it's happening right in your skull. The crew didn't talk much, they didn't need to. Morin came up beside my chair as we cleared the station's outer docks. "You ever notice how time slows before the big ones? Means your brain's doing the math on how close you are to dying," I said. "Comforting as always, sir." We took our position in the center grid, flanked by 2 destroyers and a corvette squadron. Beyond us, the black stretched toward the enemy's entry vector. Our sensor screens tracked them as they closed the distance, 20 million clicks, 1510, and then we saw them. The enemy fleet came in like a tidal wall, 3 massive capitals at the center, each with spines glowing cold blue, surrounded by their escorts in perfect formation. Behind them, the drones formed a swarm that looked like a living cloud. "Arcbanks powering," Morin reported. "Shields to full," I ordered. "Strike wing 2. On my mark, we move forward and hold formation. Let them come to us." They did. The first volley from the capital ships lit the void, arcs carving straight through one of our forward frigates before its captain even had time to scream over comms. The wreck spun away, venting fire. "Return fire," I barked. Our hell spike slammed into the lead capital, hammering its shields. Destroyers with us launched a coordinated missile barrage that splashed across the enemy's forward line. The corvettes darted in, coil guns tearing chunks from the escort's flanks. But they kept coming. The drone swarm hit first. They didn't fire, they rammed, detonating on impact with our shield. The first wave cost us 10% in under 30 seconds. "Secondary batteries, target the swarm," Morin called. Turrets across our hull lit up, shredding drones into shards. But for everyone we killed, 3 more replaced it. The escorts were next. Fast, brutal, hammering our destroyers with rail slugs and plasma. One of the destroyers took a hit to its drive core and vanished in a flash of light. The gap in our line was instant. We moved to fill it, cutting across the battlefield to keep the center intact. That brought us face to face with the lead capital ship. Its arcs flared and I knew we couldn't dodge. "Brace." The beams tore across our bow shields, collapsing to 30%. "Warning." Klaxons filled the bridge. "Damn it." Reports scrolling faster than I could read them. We hit back. Hell spike slug straight into its forward spine. The impact shattered part of its arc array. But the thing kept coming, firing from secondary banks. "Close the gap," I said. Morin blinked. "Close point blank, if we're this close. They can't risk arcs without cutting their own escorts in half." We dove under the capital's firing arc, so close its hull filled our screens. The hell spike fired again, this time punching clean through its midsection. The destroyer on our flank finished the job, missiles ripping the wound wider until the ship's reactor went. The explosion tore through the surrounding escorts, giving us the First real break in the line, but the other two capitals were still coming. And we'd lost half our wing holding the center. Then the call came over wideband from Cassin herself. All wings push. Sector Gate 9 is holding. Repeat, push them back. Every ship still breathing surged forward. The remaining capitals fought like animals, arcs slashing through our ranks, but they were losing ground. For the first time since they'd appeared, they faltered. The second capital went down under combined hell spike and missile fire, its debris scattering across the field. The third tried to retreat, but the gate's defense batteries reached out and tore it apart before it could jump. When the last enemy contact vanished from sensors, the comms were filled with static and ragged cheers. We'd held, but at a price. Out of the 20 ships in Strike Wing 2, 7 survived. The rest were gone. Crew, hull, everything. The line was still there, but it was thinner, now bleeding from every seam. Morin stood beside me as we limped back toward Ardent. His voice was quiet. You think that was all of them? I shook my head. No, that was just their hammer. Somewhere out there, the hand that swings it is still waiting, and I knew when that hand finally moved, it wouldn't just be the line at risk, it would be every world behind it. The victory at Sector Gate 9 bought us 2 weeks of patching holes in the line, replacing destroyed hulls with whatever could fly, and burying the dead in silence because there wasn't time for ceremony. I knew it wasn't enough. Holding the line was bleeding us dry. We were fighting the tip of their blade over and over, but the hand that swung, it was still out there, tightening its grip. And if we waited for them to hit again, they'd bring more than 28 ships. So I took the proposal to Cassin. It wasn't the kind of meeting you scheduled through normal channels. She came to my quarters at 200, still in uniform, still with that hardied look. That meant she hadn't slept since the battle. You've got an idea, she said without sitting. I nodded. We stopped playing defense, we take the fight to them. Her jaw tightened. You've been saying that since the first engagement. You think it's time? It's past time. Every day we sit here waiting. They're building more ships, training more crews, and digging deeper. If we don't cut the head off now, the next fleet they send will make Gate 9 look like a warm-up. She studied me for a long moment. You know what you're asking for? Deep penetration into hostile territory. No fall back, no reinforcements, no resupply. I know, I said, and I'm still asking. She didn't argue. Instead, she handed me a sealed data drive. Intelligence thinks they found the nerve center, shipyard, command hub, and manufacturing complex all in one system. Heavily defended, they call it the spine. Appropriate, I muttered. She leaned forward. You hit it hard enough. You don't just their fleet, you take away their ability to build another. That was all I needed. The task force we pulled together wasn't large. 4 ships total, my cruiser 2 stealth frig and a missile destroyer. Every hull was fast, quiet, and armed to the teeth. We'd go in under full stealth, hit the spine before they knew we were there, and burn our way out before the survivors could regroup. Morin stood on the bridge as we made final preparations. You know, sir, he said dryly, this is the part in the story where the hero says he'll be back in time for dinner and then doesn't come back at all. Good thing I'm not the hero, I said. We jumped at 500 station time. The spine system was deep inside enemy Territory 3 jumps past the graveyard through regions are charts, marked with more blanks than coordinates. The trip took 5 days, each jump pulling us farther from the line, farther from anything resembling safety. When we dropped into the spine, the system lit up on sensors like a nest of hornets. The shipyard orbited a massive gas giant, its ringed silhouette outlined in the glare of a nearby blue star. Hundreds of small craft moved along its lattice work, and at least a dozen capital ships floated in various stages of construction. The station itself was the size of a moon, with spines and docks stretching out like skeletal fingers. "Holy hell," Morin muttered. "No wonder they've been hitting us so hard. They've got enough here to double their fleet." "A year." I didn't reply. I was too busy memorizing the layout, the dock patterns, the patrol lanes, the weak points in the station's armor plating. "Frigates," I said, "circle wide, lay mines along the escape vector. Destroyer, get those missile racks hot." The first strike was surgical. The destroyer launched a salvo of long-range torpedoes at the outer dockyards, timed with the frigate's simultaneous assault on the station's sensor arrays. The result was chaos. The shipyard's perimeter lit up with alarms, escorts scrambling in every direction to find attackers they couldn't see. We dove straight for the central command tower. The Hellspike roared, punching through its forward armor and shredding comm relays. "Target the dry docks," I ordered. "Don't give them a single ship they can send back to the line." Missiles and coil gun rounds slammed into the nearest dock, tearing half-finished hulls into debris. One capital ship, barely weeks from completion, crumpled inward as its reactor went critical. But stealth never lasts forever. A wave of escorts came at us from the far side of the station, fast and tight. The first volley hit our shields hard enough to send sparks from the bridge ceiling. "Shields at 60. Morin shouted. We turned into them, coil guns blazing. 2 escorts went down in the first pass, but the others pressed closer. Drones poured from the station like angry insects, forcing the frigates to break off their mine runs and start cutting them down. The destroyer took a heavy hit to its aft section, venting atmosphere. I watched its captain swing broadside anyway, unleashing its entire missile payload into the station's main reactor tower. The blast lit the system like a sunrise, chunks of the spine spinning away into the void. The station wasn't dead yet, but it was bleeding badly. Then the real threat arrived, a capital ship bigger than anything we'd fought before, spines glowing white hot. It came in from behind the gas giant, arcs already charging. "Is that their command ship?" Morin asked. "Either that or the closest thing to a god they've got," I said. "Lock the Hellspike." We fired. First, the slug hit just below its main arc banks, tearing open a venting gash. But the ship didn't slow. The arcs fired, tearing through one of the frigates in a single blinding stroke. "Keep moving," I barked. We danced through its firing arcs, hitting it again and again with coil guns and missiles. The destroyer joined in its last operational missile bay, adding to the pounding. Slowly the monster began to list, its spines flickering. Morin looked at me. "One more shot will do it." I shook my head. "Not enough. We kill it, someone else just takes its place. We need to make it hurt." The decision wasn't one you came back from. "Plot collision course," I said. Morin stared. "Sir, empty the magazines, then ram it. We take the spine off their fleet once And for all, the crew didn't hesitate. Every last missile and shell went into the Capital's forward section, shredding its plating. Then the drive core went to full burn, the hull shuddering as we closed the gap. The enemy's arcs flared. But too late, we punched through its midsection at full speed, tearing a path that split the ship in half. The explosion ripped through both hulls, ours and theirs, turning the space between them into a cloud of fire and molten metal. I woke up to darkness, the sound of hissing air and distant groans of stressed metal. The forward viewport was gone, replaced by the black of open space. Morin's voice came through the comm, faint but alive. We got it, sir. The station's gone. The spine is gone. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Get whoever's left to the frigate, I said. We're going home. When we limped back across the line 2 weeks later, the galaxy was quieter. No more raids, no more probes. Whatever command structure had been holding their fleets together was gone. Cassin met us on the dock, her eyes taking in the battered survivors, the empty spaces where whole ships should have been. You did it, she said. Quietly, I shook my head. We bought time. That's all war ever gives you. But as I looked back at the void, I knew one thing was certain: no one would enter human space uninvited again. Not for a very, very long time.